Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 302. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, a crowdfunding securities attorney who represent investment companies, small businesses, nonprofit, cooperatives, and other social enterprise with the legal strategy and compliance of raising capital from both accredited and non-accredited investors. Welcome, Attorney Elizabeth L. Carter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Oh, wow. Okay. So yes, I manage a crowdfunding securities law firm, which essentially, if I can break it down a bit, I think a lot of people know, obviously, law firms and law, but underneath the field of law, which is expands many different subject matters, there's business law. And underneath business law, there's securities law, which is a law that regulates and concerns the capital raising namely from private investors, but also the stock exchanges and things like that. But specifically underneath that, where I focus is something called crowdfunding securities. And crowdfunding is our particular exemptions within securities law. So underneath the Securities Exchange Act or Securities Act of 1933. Why I practice in such a niche area is because who are more likely to utilize these exemptions, the crowdfunding exemptions, are mostly small businesses, small investment companies, and namely those who are owned and controlled by Black and Afro-Latinx entrepreneurs. My firm is a mission-based firm, and particularly it has a mission to democratize or increase the access to capital by and for Black entrepreneurs, because the group in terms of Black entrepreneurs, especially Black women, we're the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs and the least likely to be funded or supported. I'm doing my part to help eradicate some of those issues by making sure that our community and our businesses successfully raise capital by ensuring legal compliance.
And we know that crowdfunding is pretty hot right now, and it has been for a minute. And someone's listening, what advice would you give them if you had to give them one piece of advice about crowdfunding and protecting themselves?
Yes, I would say hire a lawyer, please. And I cannot emphasize this enough. And it's something sort of like a mini fight that I have in the industry. And I think, period, now actually speaking with a colleague of mine who's has a history in investment banking and also now in redevelopment. And, I think he got accepted to law school, but since then he's just like, I don't really respect the whole industry. And I laugh because it's not something I take personal. I understand that law and lawyers have a reputation, whether good or bad. And I always say this, you have people there's two types of people that go to law school, and obviously there's more, but at least in my mind, the way I break it down is that you have those who go because they think they're going to make a lot of money, and those who go who want to change the world, who are advocates, right? Who, if you look at some of our revolutionaries or change makers in the world, a lot of them were attorneys, Nelson Mandela, Fidel Castro. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so I think at some point people think that you can use the law to make great changes. And so that was me. I wanted to utilize this powerful tool to really increase the agency and help the most marginalized, most vulnerable communities, namely Black and Latinx communities. And so anyway, I say all that to say, I think the securities industry, particularly crowdfunding, there's sort of this DIY or do it yourself or this trivializing effect that a lot of people in the industry, particularly regulation crowdfunding platforms, try to make crowdfunding out to be. They try to make it a lot less serious than what it really is. The SEC instituted legal action against a crowdfunding platform and a business owner within the cannabis industry due to fraudulent acts, right? And I saw that as like a really good sign and moving in the right direction in terms of making sure that crowdfunding is not just left to the horses and the races. It's not the wild, wild west that it seems to be. As I started to venture into it, it seemed like that. It was just people doing whatever they wanted to do. And I'm like, wow. But to me, that's not good, particularly for vulnerable communities like Black communities, because we already have limited options when it comes to business capital, right? Venture capital barely invests in the Black community, barely invests. I think only 1% total goes to Black businesses. And then, traditional bank financing. We just posted an article with one of our colleagues here in Chicago who walked into the bank with $1 million and was rejected. So he had to resort to private capital to help fund his redevelopment project. I say that to say that for me, it's so important to hire a competent counsel that is looking out for your interests so that you're protected, not only just you, but your community and for those who are coming after you, to utilize this as a tool to make our communities more sustainable and stable over time. So this is a great crowdfunding is one of those financial tools that will help our businesses and our communities and help maintain them over time.
And Attorney Elizabeth, what was that aha moment that you knew your business was going to be successful?
That's a good question. That is a really good question. Honestly, and the same thing I think about money. I don't lead money. Money doesn't lead me. And I guess the idea of success doesn't lead me. However, that's not to say that obviously I'm not going in with the understanding that or the desire to be successful. I literally lead with passion first. And I think I just trust myself and trust my heart enough to know that success is it's inevitable. Same thing with making money. It's inevitable. I think, if we lead the other way around, you'll find yourselves in a number of things that you may or may not really be passionate or interested in. And so for me, I think I always just bet on myself and I bet on what my heart says. And I know there's nothing but success leading at the end of that tunnel.
What problem exists in the world today that you'd like to solve?
So many. But if I had to sum it all up, especially if I had to make it, in terms of me as an attorney, what I do, I would say I wanted my part as a lawyer within the world today, particularly with securities and crowdfunding. I want to help mitigate and help resolve the funding problem when it comes to our communities and our black businesses. What I mean by the funding problem, so there's this term of art called friends and family funding round. And it means just like it sounds, in that historically it's been the type of funding that a business owner or entrepreneur can tap into that is just from their networks, their friends and their family. They're heirs to money. They have their inheritance, and they use that as a nest egg to then leverage and raise more capital, and they go on to be very successful business owners and entrepreneurs. The problem, though, when it comes to Black communities especially, is that we didn't have that same opportunities to really build that generational wealth. So we don't have sort of that ability to tap into our friends and literal friends and family to gain that, additional or that initial seed capital or funding to that is necessary to pay the cost of raising more money. And that cost includes legal, marketing, accounting, et cetera. So without that cost, without paying for that cost, you can't successfully raise that $1 million you really need, right? And so for me, what I want to do is help eradicate that. And it's a systematic issue, right? And to me, what I do is I build ecosystems of support for Black entrepreneurs and my clients so that, it's not just illegal. I understand that they also need marketing. I understand that they also need a great accountant to help with the audited financials. I try to build that system around me because it's not readily available for Black entrepreneurs the way it is for white entrepreneurs. Today, right now, as a crowdfunding securities attorney, that is the global problem that I would like to solve when it comes to particularly Black entrepreneurs here in America.
So someone is listening to this podcast and they reside in California. Do you operate in other states or just in Chicago?
Yes, I operate. Securities great. The great thing about securities law is that it's a federal law. It impacts across the states. Typically, the clients are raising capital from investors all over the country, definitely in more than one state. So that qualifies me to represent them because it's federal law. It applies across the board. So yes, I have clients in California, I have clients in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, I have clients in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, literally pretty much any particular big area, big city you can think of, I have clients there.
Advice you wish you had followed?
I think maybe this is a wellness question. And I think because we get so caught up in the business and technical and just running ahead and being successful financially and professionally that we sometimes forget that it's also important to be successful emotionally, personally, just being you, making sure that you are growing because, I am more than just a crowdfunding securities attorney, right? I am very dynamic, just like many of us are. And so I wish, and I'm still working on that I have a better balance at that. And some people call work-life balance, but it's mostly, this personal well-being and work balance, making sure that, I get enough rest, making sure that I ease the worries because everything literally will be all right, and just reminding myself. So, and as a Black woman entrepreneur, it's very difficult, we're the least, again, I'm not exempt from that statistic, right? We're the least supported, least funded. And so we're always working 10 to 15 times harder. And we have the world on our shoulders, our families on our shoulders, some of us children in the community. And so we're bringing all of this with us, which is the beauty of supporting Black women and women in general, but particularly Black women, because we don't just bring ourselves, we bring everybody with us. But the flip side of that, we carry a lot of weight. And so I say all that to say that I think the advice that I am still aiming to listen to and follow is take time for yourself, rest. And then tomorrow is another day to tackle.
Speaking of rest, talk about self-care, Attorney Elizabeth. What does self-care look like to you?
So when I wake up in the morning, my mind is the sharpest. So I feel motivated to start checking emails, responding to messages, contacting my assistant, get ready, started for the day and what we're going to post and what are some of the assignments I need to, or some of the emails or calls I need to respond to. So I do that first, but I also then transition to sort of this meditative kind of state where, I'll light a candle, I burn incense, I will burn Palo Santo and just sort of stretch and just pause right before I really, really start with the day. And I think that's very helpful. If I wake up early enough, I try to work out, do at least 20 minutes, hit strong workout. If not, though, I'll do that in the evening. But I think those are very, very important. You feel so much better. Sometimes it's hard to motivate yourself because, again, your mind is always on work, but you feel so much better. So I definitely highly recommend taking that time in the morning and the evening just for yourself. Turn off your phone, don't look at it, and just have that moment to recharge.
Talk about the pandemic, profits, and pivot.
I would say I could talk to my experience. It was just like I think for most people, a scary time. I rebranded the firm right before everything shut down. And I remember just thinking like, now what? But the beauty of it, so the pivot of it was that I immediately utilized LinkedIn a lot more than I ever have. And I think a lot of other people did as well. Because again, we're at home, we're on the computer. And so I was able to truly connect with people and build partnerships and collaborations and also receive potential clients from there. I mean, my law clerk, Shanique, right now, who's actually taking the bar and who's going to work for the firm full time starting next year and eventually as a co-owner, I met her on LinkedIn and I saw that she was a Black woman law student and interested in securities. And I just said, hey, you want to join me? And so that part was really well. And I think 2020 was definitely devastating for profits, but we definitely saw a uptick 2021. And I think a lot of people have. And so I say all that to say that statistics rolling around that by the end of 2020, over 40% of Black businesses permanently shut down. And I don't know if part of that is that some of them had to start a new business or pivot, but that is a scary reality when it comes to, again, access to opportunities. A lot of us turn to entrepreneurship because of limited opportunities in the workforce or our limited opportunities to actually, exceed or to get raises or to get promotions. And so we turn to ourselves and we bet on ourselves. And so it's scary to see that. So for me, seeing 2021 as a rise and seeing our community and our businesses thrive despite it was very inspiring to me as well and encouraged me to push forward. So I will say that it started off very scary and it ended up and it's still showing improvement. So, pivoting is very, very important, especially in entrepreneurship.
Talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger you?
I think the biggest advice I would give, or the main advice I would give the younger me is, again, everything is going to be all right. And then I guess second that, making sure that you keep great people around you, building great friendships, making sure that those who are around you inspire you and support you, and that you're not feeling like you're doing it alone, because you're not alone. Remind yourself that you're not alone. You have support, you have a team. You just have to find the right people to, fill those gaps. And so I would tell my younger self that. so that, again, I don't feel that it's just me and I don't feel like the whole world's on my shoulders. We can share that burden together.
The words are give and get. What do you want to give and what do you want to get?
I want to just give my talent, share my talents with the world and with others. I want to give the knowledge that I've acquired and give it to others, share with others. And as far as get, I want a community of support. I want to receive a strong ecosystem of a strong fabric of people coming together, supporting not only me or my firm or my initiatives, but also those that I support, and have this circle, right? This circle of resources being shared and circulated throughout, because I think it's necessary for sustainability, especially within the Black community. And so I wish to give knowledge and talent and support, and I wish to receive support and a strong ecosystem and community fabric so that we can sustain those talents, right? Sustain those resources.
Talk about business continuity. What is your highest risk as a business owner?
I think you can't be afraid to take risks. As an attorney, we're risk averse. We're very cautious, especially when we're advising our clients. We give them everything that can go wrong and, be careful. But as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I have to put on that hat as well. Sometimes you just have to blaze through, and they're countering. Sometimes they counter one another. The advice that I would give as an attorney and the advice I would give as an entrepreneur. But the biggest thing is that you cannot be afraid to bet and to invest in yourself and your business. So sometimes you have to put up the money up front, and you may not see the rewards until some time later, but you have to have faith and have to know yourself and trust yourself that investment is going to come back tenfold. I've learned, particularly this year, is that I needed to build a strong team around me. I needed to invest in other Black women around me in order to really make this a successful enterprise, not just a solo law firm. I was successful at that. I then wanted to build an actual law firm that is co-owned by other women, particularly Black women in the space. So I wanted to train other Black women and educate other Black women so that they see themselves as they grow and start businesses as the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. They have that legal support that looks like them, that understands their struggles. And so part of the big risk is you just have to go out, seek it, ask for it, spend money on it, and have faith and trust that it's going to, provide those great returns for you.
Talking about raising capital, how did you raise capital to start your business?
I've done what they call bootstrap. And then, the business model was successful enough to bring in clients that basically, the service was there. But also I started a fund, a legal fund, which I partnered with a nonprofit organization based out of Oakland called the Sustainable Economies Law Center. I have a long-standing relationship with them. I'm a fellow of their fellowship program, and we partnered together to help capitalize what the firm terms hashtag Black Capital Matters Legal Fund. And the point of this legal fund was to receive donations. So it wasn't equity or loans. It was purely donations, of which people can receive tax deductions through their donation to the nonprofit itself, or they can donate directly to the firm without that tax deduction. However, nonetheless, I should say, the idea behind the fund, again, going back to that friends and family funding problem, is to help subsidize a legal cost. So at least, as a law firm in this space, in this industry, I can do my part. So my rates, actually, the legal rates at the firm are probably one of the most, if not the most affordable legal rates, because the idea is to be accessible to those that are already underrepresented and marginalized. However, I also understand that there's, these rates are still inaccessible to some of our Black business owners and entrepreneurs and just, small business in general. And so I wanted this fund to help offset those costs. So at least they can save costs on that part of the friends and family round of costs, right? And funding. And that'll be my contribution to that sort of funding gap there. And so for me, that's my part of my experience of personally raising money through the crowd. I reached out to my network and still reaching out to my network, doing strong marketing around that, reaching out directly through letters, with my networks to help support the campaign, receive really great support, still need more money, right? And so the money definitely we need as much as possible. The cost is not cheap. that's where we are now. In the future, I've thought about doing other crowdfunding initiatives, and so we'll wait and see what that looks like next year. But this year, we decided to go the donation route, to use a fiscal sponsor nonprofit to help generate those funds for these Black businesses that are in need of subsidized legal services to help them raise capital.
What inspires you to keep going?
The problem, I think, knowing that, the issue is still there, I keep going. It's like I'm there to solve it, right? As like just like a medical doctor who's there to help heal the sick, and the sickness is just coming. And so I think that's my motivation, is that so long as the problem's still there, the greater reason why I need to be in the fight still. And I do see it as a fight. I mean, I study political science and philosophy and African American studies in undergrad. So my mindset is always looking at think problems as a challenge to combat and to really overhaul something and to make something anew. For me, that inspires me. The vision, and also the vision of reimagining what the new could look like, and having faith that, and not just faith, but the foresight to say that, no, we can do something different and better. Like the world doesn't have to look this grim. It doesn't have to be so unequal and inequitable for Black owners and Black families. Like, we can really create a system that is more equitable, that do respect, Black people all over the world like they do white people all over the world, right? And give them that respect and that support and that funding and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That they deserve. And so for me, that motivates me, the vision that is a reality, that can be a reality, and the problem that, okay, it's necessary that we need to get in the fight and make sure that we make this better.
Attorney Elizabeth, what is your zone of genius?
I'm a strong critical thinker. Have always been. I've never been the type to regurgitate information. I've always been the type to critique, to question, ask why, and come up with my own solutions and theories and answers to a problem. And so now, as a crowdfunding securities attorney, I still do that. Like, I don't move like everyone else. I don't provide the same solution. I'm trying to always find new ways to make it better, to improve it. So I think that is my genius, is being able to critically think and not being afraid to be different, not being afraid to be bold enough to say, no, we're going to do it differently. I know what everyone else do, but we're going to, move to our own beat of the drum, right? So I think that's it. So it's the genius and the courageousness behind it.
What is your weakness as an entrepreneur?
So I would say I have an accountant now, which is, I'm glad, because I know I'm a big picture thinker. The details, not so much, depending on what it is, especially when it comes to finances and the money coming in. I know it's coming in. I know I have enough to pay for this, to do this, but how and seeing a story behind it, those are details that I don't have either the time or sort of the patience for. And so the weakness is that I knew I needed someone who's who understands numbers, who sees numbers differently than I, who can come up with a story looking at numbers and financials, and to help me. And I did. And I got a Black woman accountant to help me do that. And so far, I appreciate the service. It shows me that I don't have to learn and know everything. I can, share with others, and we can learn and grow together. And so that part, I think you should know enough so that you know where you need to be headed, but you definitely should add, if that's your weakness, particularly me, I knew my weakness was the details. I needed to add someone on the team that can help enlighten and shed light to those details for me. So the financials and the numbers, like I said, the last time I took a math class was freshman year of college. So you don't use it, you lose it. So, working in securities, I'm having to regain that experience or that knowledge. But yeah, I would say the weakness is just the detailed financials and the numbers and all that good stuff.
Let's take a look back at the last 30 days. What is your greatest win over the last 30 days?
September, I would say it would have to be the large recognition of the Black Capital Matters, # Black Capital Matters legal fund. Received overwhelming amount of support from afar, from everywhere. People sharing, resharing the article. Black Enterprise featured it. BlackNews.com featured it. And also First Boulevard. That was great to see them talk about the firm and what we're doing. And I think that's always good. I think, again, being in the crowdfunding security space, marketing is very, very key. Getting people to be aware of what it is, who you are, what you do, and then thereon turn that into real tangible support. And so I will say that's been my greatest achievement in the last 30 days, is really having people notice the fund and support the fund and know that it's needed. So it's not just my great idea, it's an idea that others also agree with. So that's been a highlight for the last 30 days.
And how do you celebrate your wins?
I celebrate with my team every week. We do status calls and we update one another, and we just sit back and we talk about, what we can do to improve. Of course, we talk about the assignments and things like that, but we also, try to talk about what we are doing right, and acknowledge that, acknowledging that. I also celebrate just every day. I take breaks. I go with the flow. I feel that, if I want to, summertime in Chicago, have dinner on a rooftop bar, I will. I try to just enjoy moments as much as possible.
What is one thing we can do right now to support your business?
Yay. I think really, the hashtag Black Capital Matters Legal Fund, you can support that. Everyone, again, I look at you all as my friends and family around, right? As my community, as my long distance cousins, right? And to help support the effort, not only just support the firm, but support those clients that will come through the firm and those Black businesses that are very, very talented, very, very skilled, have strong business plans and models, and just do not have that early pre-seed capital or anyone really supporting that vision so early on in terms of giving them that early capital, that I will ask you all to help me support them. So the link to that you can support online is www.elcesq.com/legal fund, all one word. And that is the biggest ask of me right now to you all.
Let's talk about redo. Is there an event in your life that you would like to redo and why?
Someone asked me this question yesterday, actually, and I think it relates to a question of whether you have any regrets. I do not. I don't think I want to redo anything. I think everything, even the sad moments, the down times, the challenging times, were all necessary to build the woman that you see today. And those that's going to come after is going to build that woman in the future. And I feel that I'm grateful because I find a lesson in everything. And I think that relates to another question when people talk about failures. I honestly never failed. And I don't think it's because I haven't lost anything. It's how I look at and how I interpret these things. And some people may call something a failure because they didn't reach some goal within a stated amount of time. I don't see it as a failure. I see it as, okay, well, this is a lesson. Maybe this was a step to another opportunity, a redirection to something else. So everything to me is necessary. And so will I redo it? No, I enjoy the journey. I will say this to anyone, enjoy the journey, the ups and downs, because they definitely make you and make the next great thing.
What have you not done in life that you dream about often that you would like to do?
I want to write a book. I want to write several books. I have ideas. Some of them are, memoir and biography related. Others are, just speaking to the industry a bit, about what I've seen in terms of trends and securities and capital raised within the Black community and selling companies. And so I really want to really take some time and reflect and write a book, do book tours, do talks, and do more education and spreading awareness to the community and to the people.
The best advice you were ever given?
Well, I can say the first thing that just came to my mind when you asked me that was an advice from one of my mentors who's have since retired. He practiced law for over 40 years. He and I came across when I just launched my firm back in 2017. But actually, we met a little time before that. But he was right there when I launched it. And the one thing he told me was that you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. And that helped because especially early on, of course you're going to make mistakes. Part of learning is that you have to do and fall, right? Part of learning how to walk, you had to crawl and then you had to stand up and fall a bunch of times. Like that is life, that is reality. And I think, being a young attorney, being someone that people look to for answers, I was afraid to admit that, afraid to make a mistake. And of course, it's not like huge life-threatening mistakes, but there are mistakes nonetheless. And so that was the best advice. And that's the advice that I give my clerks, right? That, you're not going to get it perfect. You're still learning. I teach at, University of Illinois Law School. I teach the law students that, like you don't have to know the answer. This is your time to learn and to grow, right? And so that is the best advice, is that mistakes are going to happen and be okay with that. Learn from them and move on.
Attorney Elizabeth, I want you to have a monologue. I want you to talk to a person, living or not, This person has inspired you so much. Name the person and what are you saying to that person?
Someone who's inspired me so much. That's a hard question. I get inspired by many people. It's hard to answer that question. If I had to pick one person, I'll say, so I have a portrait of Harriet Tubman. I had someone draw it and paint it for me. And it was after I watched the movie of her. I didn't, of course I learned of her story before then, but it resonated with me, particularly the film and some of the lines in there, because she fought for what was right. She fought for her community, people that looked like her, that had the same lived experience. And she fought and she sacrificed in the name of principle and the name of justice. And I would like to say to her that I believe that I'm embodying that spirit in my work. Although it's not the Underground Railroad, right? I think the challenges that we face today are different, but are the same at the same time. If that makes any sense. We just have to learn, we have to see it. We have to unveil the cover-ups to really realize what the root that we're targeting, the root issue. And the root issue in this case is that Black people in America are still struggling to become equal or to be free, right? And to absolve themselves from white supremacy. And white supremacy looks like only 98% of the VC funding goes to white men. White supremacy looks like, although $1.7 billion went to nonprofits for racial equity, most of that were white-led nonprofits, right? White supremacy looks like, most funding for co-op development, even in Black and brown areas, are to white lawyers and white technical support providers. These are real issues that, even though on the surface looks like things aren't as dire, there's a problem. And so for me, I'm constantly pushing back and constantly fighting for equitable distribution of wealth, equitable distribution of capital, equitable distribution of health, and just X, Y, Z. So that is who I would thank and who I would talk to. And that, her work wasn't in vain then, and certainly not in vain now. Like me and so many others like me are still carrying that tradition of fighting for what's right, saving and helping our community and our people, to be as, productive and sustainable as they can be.
The word is listening. What is that resounding sound or message that your generation is saying that we should be listening to?
The youth. I think that's always been it, though. I think the youth often get ignored because you don't know any better, but they are the future and their voice matters. And I want to get more, which is why, again, I reach back to, for instance, law students to say, hey, you can do this. I don't care that you haven't practiced for 20 years. I don't care. You don't need that, right? I encourage them to have a confidence in themselves because they will be the ones to carry on that torch. Hopefully longer are the days that we have 70-year-old or retiree, entrepreneurs who have no one to succeed their efforts, who have no one there that they can pass on the torch. That's a problem. There should be someone there. If you've been doing your homework or reaching back, there should be someone there. And so I think the youth and those who are and being true mentors, I always had struggle trying to find a good mentor. I had to just find people that I just admired from afar and was like, hey, can you mentor me? Right. But, oftentimes it was just a challenge. And I felt we need to do better with that. We need to not just look at ourselves and worry about what we got going on, but it's about not just you, it's about a legacy that you're leaving, not for just your children. Some of us will never have children, but just for the generations that come after you. So that is what I would say, the youth. Listen to the youth and what they want and their needs and help guide them, but also allow them the freedom to be who they will be.
Speaking of legacy, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone who blazed trails, who stayed true to herself, despite the pushback, despite the sort of influences to just to walk the walk and to toe the line. And someone who persevered, someone who was bold enough to fight what was right and didn't have to compromise herself or her morals. That's how I want to be remembered. And I want to be able to pass that strength on to the next so that they too can push forward for what's right, for what's positive, and don't feel like they have to compromise to do so.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
Black women. Black women are dominating the entrepreneurial space, the business space, and I admire them because literally the most neglected, unsupported population in the world, period, but especially within the business world. We get neglected, we get ignored, we face misogyny, we face sexism, we face racism. And so for me to see us succeed despite all that, man, that's magic. And I love to see it. And again, I think that we shouldn't have to work so hard, but I appreciate the hard work. And I want to say to all my sisters in business and Black women in business is that we need to rely and lean on one another more often.
Who are your top two influencers in your life and what lessons did they teach you?
I mean, of course, I would say my mother, just the first lesson she taught me to be self-reliant and to be independent. I thank her for that. I think that gave me the ability to move, even when it's not so popular, to, advocate for certain things, even when it's not so sexy, and to really rely on myself and to trust myself and without the need for validation from others. So I thank her for that. Another person I would say are just my support group, my friends and my I would say particularly my friends that I have that I can call on, who always knows what's best to say when I'm not feeling my best. And I appreciate them taking that time, encouraging me and assuring me that, things will be all right and giving me actionable, practical steps to move forward. So they are equally as successful, equally amazing. And I'm influenced by their particular skill sets as well. And I am grateful that they're able to provide that support for me in the midst of all that's going on in their lives. So those are, I would say, a group, which is some friends and my mother are my biggest influences.
What is the best decision you've made as a leader?
To not operate like a leader. And what I mean by that is not to not to structure as a hierarchy. The way I lead is a collective collaboration style. It's more horizontal rather than vertical. I don't like the word boss. I think just making sure that we take out those arbitrary, problematic, toxic work behavior out of my space and my firm. I think that's the best thing I could have done. So again, inspiring, empowering, and I hate that word empower because I think people always have power. But nonetheless, I think the best thing I could have done is not try to be the face and the leader. We're all leaders and we're here to work together to solve a problem that's going to take all of us to do.
Attorney Elizabeth, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
What are your hobbies, I guess? And the way I would answer that question is I like to read. I like to write. I am very introspective. I'm very intuitive. And I like to do things that strengthen those qualities for me. And I think the question really relates to well-roundedness. And I want people to know that I am more than I'm dynamic. I have many interests, and I think many of us do. And I don't think we should be labeled or put in boxes. And I don't think we should be restricted or limited. If you want to wake up one day and just write a book, do it. And you've never written one before, just do it. So for me, freedom is everything, and being able to be free to do what you wish and to have complexity about yourself. So the hobbies are important because it showcases that.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Sure.
Your first job.
McDonald's.
Your favorite color.
Purple.
The last movie you saw.
Probably something sci-fi. I'm a sci-fi fan.
You relax doing what?
Reading, or lately, the reruns of The Golden Girls.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
I would say what I'm listening to now, which I have to repeat, is the Do or Die 2 album by AZ, who is a rapper of the 90s, but has made a comeback apparently because I love that album.
Your favorite dance song?
It would have to be something dance hall related. So I don't know. I just had it and it just left me. Maybe Afrobeat or dance hall.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Apples.
Your favorite month?
February.
Work out or hit the couch?
Workout.
Attorney Elizabeth Carter, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you, to do business with you, and feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Sure. The best way to reach me is by email. My direct email is ec@elcesq.com. The social media handles are on both Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is at ELCESQ And in LinkedIn, the company page is Elizabeth L. Carter, Esquire, LLC, or www.linkedin.com/company/ELCESQ.
Thank you, Attorney Elizabeth. That's a wrap.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.